And another CEO Wisdom podcast with Keisha Greaves, none other than Keisha Greaves. She is CEO and founder at Girls Chronically Rock. We're going to talk about a bunch of interesting topics today. Chronic diseases affect more people than we think. And yeah, I thought it would be important to bring Keisha. Plus, she's been an entrepreneur for quite a while. She's been a designer. So we're going to talk about that side of the business and what Keisha is up to nowadays. This podcast has been brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start, scale, or be invited to podcasts like that and have guests like Keisha, get insights, get subscribers, get views, get leads, get clients. Podcasts are cool. Podpire.com. We have Keisha with us today. Keisha, can you briefly introduce us to yourself and tell us about Girls Chronically Rock?
Sure. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Keisha Greaves, and I'm the CEO and founder of Girls Chronically Rock clothing brand. Girls Chronically Rock clothing brand was founded in 2017 because I wanted to help create and motivate and inspire others in the disability community. I myself was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy in my early 20s, and my type is called limb girdle muscular dystrophy.
Wow. So yeah, congrats on just making it through that and starting something that, can leave a positive mark on this. Well, I think a lot of people, they just go on their own way, but it seems that you're the entrepreneurial type. Tell us as per like your background, first designing stuff, and tell us at the moment about the moment you were actually diagnosed with the disease and how that.
Sure. So yeah, I always had a passion for fashion. That's number one. So growing up as a little child, I knew I always wanted to be a fashion designer. Growing up, I looked up to designers such as Kimora Lee Simmons from Baby Phat, Tommy Hilfiger, and Betsy Johnson. I mean, who doesn't love Betsy Johnson with her quirkiness? And she still does cartwheels like at the end of her fashion show. So I always loved her. So I always knew I wanted to be that. Of course, my mom wanted me to go to school for like computer science or something in medical, but I do appreciate that she still allowed me to choose my major and still paid, because I know some parents do not. And so, yeah, I graduated. I went to school at Framingham State University, which is out here in Massachusetts. So it was pretty much like maybe an hour from out of the city. And I stayed on campus and I studied fashion design and merchandising. So, of course, being at Framingham State, I was not diagnosed with muscular dystrophy then. So I'm walking up and down stairs with groceries, laundry that I brought home every weekend for my mom to do. So, it's so crazy how I always say, like, you never know what's going on in your body. And you never know, like, life can change in an instant. And so I graduated in 2007. I took about a year off. And then I went to Cambridge College out here in the city where I live. And I wanted to get my master's because I wanted to get more of the business side of things. And so I went to Cambridge College and I graduated from there in around 2010. And I got my master's in business. So I was, of course, excited. But of course, during that journey of being in graduate school at Cambridge College, that's when I was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. It's so crazy. The symptoms just honestly came out of nowhere. I would be walking and my leg would just give out. And I would just thought, oh, I need to lose some weight. No big deal. Whatever, just kind of brushing it off. But the one time that it really stood out, me, my mom and sister were leaving the supermarket. I'm pushing the cart and boom, my leg it gives out and I fall to the floor without any notice or anything. And when I fell, it was like I was a dead weight. It wasn't like I was able to get myself back up, like, oh, brush it off. Like, no, it was like I needed that assistance. And my mom and sister weren't able to even get me up. So I remember a guy, he came over very nice and he was like, do you need help? And he was able to get me up. And it was at that moment that my mom and sister were like, maybe it's time to go get something checked out. Something doesn't seem right. You're falling and things like that. And I'm like, la-di-da, like, just still brushing it off, not really thinking anything. So we go see an orthopedic out here in Boston, Mass at Tufts Medical Hospital. I always remember that appointment. I go in, lie on the examination room. 2 doctors come in. They're like, raise your right leg. The right leg would not extend out as it should. Same as the left. And that was the first time I noticed that. So I thought, okay, well, no biggie. But both doctors looked at each other like they were totally puzzled. Like they're like, okay, this is strange. Why isn't it going up? They're like, you know what? Maybe this is something more neuromuscular. Maybe you need to see a neurologist. So I'm like, what are they talking about? I'm like, oh, whatever. I just need an exit. Still like brushing it off. So I go see the neurologist out here in Cambridge, and we go straight to it. I see Dr. Catherine Wang. I still see her to this day. And we do EMG, MRI, like all these tests I've never even heard of. But the most interesting of all was when I got that muscle biopsy. And that was interesting because I was awake for that. And from that muscle biopsy, they tested it. And from that's when they determined I had muscular dystrophy. So I would never forget that phone call when she called and said, Keisha, we got your test results back. It shows that you have muscular dystrophy. And I'm like, muscular dystrophy? What is that? Nobody in my family seemed to have it. I never heard of it. So I'm like, what is she talking about? She must have called the wrong patient, or they got the test results mixed up. That was honestly what my mindset was at that moment.
Wow. And what happened from there? You just Googled it and found out
Yeah.
about the symptoms and we're like, holy fuck, my life is not going to be the same anymore.
Exactly. That's how, like, they say, the doctors always say stay off Google, but I'm like, I believe in Google. So although I was thinking like she got the wrong test results, of course I go straight to Google, as you said, and I'm like muscular dystrophy, and I'm reading, oh, it affects people from like at childbirth, young boys, there's no treatment, no cure. And I'm like, well, this is not me. So obviously she got the test results mixed up. I'm like, I'm not a boy. I don't have it. I'm still walking. So I just thought, where's she getting this information from? But I knew deep down inside there had to be some kind of truth to it. But I was
Right.
still just denying it at the time.
Yeah, pure denial, like the phases of trauma, but you still
Yeah.
felt the hit, right? Like it still
Oh yeah.
hit you deep in your gut, and we're like, man, okay, there's something wrong here.
Yeah. It
What did
sucks.
you do after that? Like, how did you transition that negative energy to positive energy?
Sure, it definitely took some time at that moment. I mean, I wasn't telling any family or friends. The only reason family knew was because, my mom would correspond with her sisters, my aunties, and they would tell, my cousins, but it wasn't something I really acknowledged. So I tell people, I'm like, if you had asked me a few years back, oh, do you see yourself, being like an ambassador or, being an advocate for the disability community, sharing your story, I'll be like, no way, because I don't have muscular dystrophy. So that's how much in denial I was. And then I started to do physical therapy, started using a cane because the doctor did say it's going to progress, Keisha. It's going to get worse. And I'm like, no, I got this. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to lose weight. Muscular dystrophy, what? So going even on job interviews, going to work, because I was working on the field at the time. I was able to stay and drive. I was a merchandiser for Tommy Hilfiger, Calvin Klein, traveling to Nordstrom's, Macy's. I missed that. I love that. That was like, my space. I love merchandising, fashion. That's all I'm about. So as I'm using the cane, people will be like, oh, what's wrong? I would say, oh, I sprained my ankle or I was in a car accident, because that sounded better than saying I had muscular dystrophy. So that's
Right.
how much in denial I was, because I'm like, oh, I was in a car accident. Whatever it said came to mind. That's what I said, because I'm like, I was in such denial, not accepting the fact that I had muscular dystrophy. So it definitely took some time to get used to. My friend one day said, Keisha, why don't you write a blog, share your story? And I said, no way. I said, because I don't have muscular dystrophy. So why would I write a blog? Because that's how I'm like, why are you trying to tell me this? And then I remember just opening up my laptop at that time and just started writing and venting, just like how I am with you now, like talking about the symptoms, what I went through, the journey. And it was like at that moment, as I'm typing it, saying it out loud, I was like, wow, I have muscular dystrophy. That's crazy. It was like, it took that moment, never mind what
That
the doctors were saying.
realization. Yeah.
Right. It was like, never mind what the doctors were saying. It took for me at that moment, I'm like, I have muscular dystrophy. That's crazy. And I just posted it on social media. And I remember just getting such great support, feedback about people saying, oh, yeah, I've heard of this. And, my mom may have MS. And, so that kind of opened the door a little bit at that time for me.
Right. And how did that lead to what you're into nowadays? Girls Chronically Rock. What was the aha moment that was like, I need to do something about this?
Yeah, so once I wrote that blog, like I said, it kind of opened the door a little bit, but not 100%. I mean, of course, I was still in denial. But as time went on, I was like, it's time to put my fashion degree to use. And I was able to finish graduate school, which I'm awesome. The teachers, my classmates were very supportive because they knew about what was going on. It's like I felt like I had no choice but to tell them, because I'm like, they see me like every week. And so at that time, I'm like, it's time to stop putting my degree to use. Maybe I'm a true believer and things do happen for a reason. I may not understand at that time, when sometimes I still don't know why to this day, But I'm like, maybe I was put to, create adaptive fashion and support and be the advocate for the disability community. So that's when I wanted to create, a business line, because I did have another clothing business in mind. I was actually going to name it after my grandmother. So when all of this came about, I just kind of like pivoted. And then I wanted to start off with t-shirts because I love inspirational quotes and different inspiring things like graphic t-shirts on shirts. So once I see that, I'm like, I have to buy it. And so I wanted to create something with like different sayings. So and how I came up with the word Girls Chronically Rock is that I knew I wanted something with the word chronic in it, but I didn't know how I wanted to incorporate it. So I honestly was lying in bed one night and I thought Girls Chronically Rock. It just kind of came to me. That's when most of my creative ideas come to me when I'm sleeping. And I just love the way it sounded. I love the way it flowed. And then I remember waking up the next day and I was like, I like that, Girls Chronically Rock. And then that's when I was like, let me search for a graphic designer because I'm just like, that's so not my alley. Like I'm good at, designing, styling. But when it comes to that stuff, I'm like, no way. So I had a vision of what I wanted my logo to look like. And I first started selling them on Etsy. And then from Etsy, that's when I officially launched the website, Girls Chronically Rock.
Love
And
it.
it's so exciting. And I love it. It keeps me motivated and inspired to this day. I get excited when people like you, others want to interview me and hear my story. And I'm like, you do? You want to listen to me?
It's a great story.
Sometimes you can doubt yourself, with, running a business and also having a disability is a lot,
Right.
but I'm going to continue to strive. And that's why now on top of the t-shirts, I now have an adaptive swimsuit collection for people with disabilities to help them get dressed, easier on a daily basis, taking on and off your swimsuit so you can go to aquatic therapy to get that exercise. Because I tell people when I do aquatic therapy, I feel like I'm a mermaid in the water. I can
Love
do
it.
things in the water that I can't do on land, because the gravity. And so I'm so happy to, have that adaptive line. And then there's so much more adaptive clothing I plan to do under Girls Chronically Rock. But like I tell people, it's not just about clothing for me and fashion. Like, of course, I live and breathe fashion, but I look at Girls Chronically Rock also as a movement and a
Right.
disability advocate. And I'm going to continue to bring awareness within the disability community.
How big is the total addressable market in the US when it comes to muscular dystrophy? How many folks are affected by the disease?
It's I don't have the exact number, but it is a lot. And I was the MDA, Massachusetts Muscular Dystrophy Association ambassador early, like when I was first diagnosed. And that was, I learned so much then of connecting with other individuals, but it's a lot. And when I see how many people have a similar story to me as well that were affected in their later early 20s. So I'm like, that's so interesting. Like, you don't know. You wish you could get like some kind of warning or something like, hey, do you want this? And then some people have it from the time they were born. But like I always said, like I may get the support of family and friends, but there's nothing like talking to somebody who has a disability, chronic illness, because they get that everyday struggle. They know what you're dealing with. So I'm like, I love advocating and meeting others, because that's another thing that helped me come out of my shell, where I would go on Instagram and use hashtag like disability awareness, hashtag muscular dystrophy. And I met so many other individuals that not only just have muscular dystrophy like me, but others like, Black, other, muscular dystrophy, and they're on there doing their disability content on YouTube. And I'm like, that's so inspiring. I'm like, okay, I can do this. So that definitely has helped me along the way. But yeah, the muscular dystrophy is a very large number. To this day, there still is no treatment, no cure. And the only really thing they say is really physical therapy. But that's the thing you can't win, because it's like when you're in physical therapy, they say, yeah, exercise your muscles, but don't overwork them because then you're going to get fatigued. So it's like you can't win.
Right. You can win mentally though. Like I believe in the
Yeah.
power of mindset and, just like being positive. Obviously there's it's not all of that, and it's more complex than we think. I also think we're on the verge of multiple scientific and medical discoveries with artificial intelligence. So there is hope. There is light. I want to ask though, what are your objectives for the rest of this year? What is on your to-do list?
Sure. On my to-do list with myself and Girls Chronically Rock is I'm going to continue to advocate. I am on the board for Persons of People with Disabilities Commission in Cambridge. So, I want to make my city of Cambridge better, more accessible, more accessible, affordable housing. On top of that, Girls Chronically Rock will be starring in New York Fashion Week next month, September. So I will be there September 7th to the 10th. I'm so excited to see Girls Chronically Rock just on the runway. And then I have two of my friends that also have disability in a wheelchair modeling for me. So I'm so excited because I feel like it's so important to show that representation on the runway. So yeah, I'm excited. I hope to hopefully be invited to more fashion shows throughout the ending of the year next year, 2024. And my ultimate goal is to hopefully get Girls Chronically Rock into retail channels like Macy's and Target. So that's my ultimate goal. But as of now, I'm taking each day at a time because, like I tell people, living with a disability with muscular dystrophy, I never know what the body's going to feel like. So some days I may wake up, I'm tired, exhausted, have to do a meeting, but I just try to keep going, keep striving. And I tell people all the time, watching TV shows, my reality TV is honestly another thing that keeps me sane because it's like entertaining. So if I'm like down, sad, and maybe in like not the best mood, just knowing I have something on my TV to watch just puts me in like a happier place.
Yeah, that's the purpose of these. I was having a convo with my wife about that yesterday. Well, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your message, and I'm glad that you're checking your boxes. Like that's huge accomplishments you just mentioned. Please send me pictures as well.
Oh,
Where can
yeah.
people find out more about you, Keisha?
Sure. You can definitely check out my website on girlschronicallyrock.com. I am also on Instagram, Girls Chronically Rock Clothing, Twitter, Girls Chronicle 1. So yeah, definitely reach out, send me a message.